I unlocked the front door of our cozy brownstone just as dusk settled over the city, the warm glow of streetlights filtering through the stained glass panels. My heart was hammering with excitement and with dread. In my hand, I clutched two envelopes. One held news that could transform our lives. The other, well, the other carried a weight I wasn't sure I could bear. I paused in the entryway, dropped my keys on the console, and ran a hand through my hair. I'd rehearsed this moment all day. Should I start with the good news, my promotion at the design firm, the one I'd been working toward for 2 years? Or should I get the bad news over with first, so that the excitement of the good could cushion the blow? Logic said honesty first, the harder truth, then the celebration. But my throat tightened at the thought. I took a deep breath. "Okay, Tiffany," I whispered to myself. "You've got this." I stepped into the living room, where soft jazz drifted from the speaker. The scent of lavender and clean linen reminded me of the peace I'd always felt here, until today. He was on the phone in the corner by the window, backlit by the fading sky. His silhouette was familiar, tall, broad-shouldered, always impeccably dressed. James. My husband of 5 years, the man I trusted with my heart. His voice was low and tense, so different from the gentle tone he used with me. "I told you I'm nearly out of time," he murmured, pacing. "Yes, I have the money. But what about the transfer? Tomorrow morning?" "No, that's too late. She needs it yesterday." I froze, pulse spiking. He sounded panicked. It didn't compute. James was a banker. He handled 6-figure transactions before breakfast. He was the calm to my storm, the voice of reason I leaned on. Yet here he was, edges frayed as though he were a man at war. A bead of sweat trickled down my temple. I forced myself to step forward, to clear my throat and announce my return. But at that moment, he glanced over his shoulder, eyes widening just for a split second. I ducked behind the sofa cushion without making a sound. He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Listen, if you don't come through, I'll lose everything. I can't let that happen. Do I make myself clear? Good. I'll have the paperwork signed before sunrise." He clicked the phone off and sank into the armchair, running a hand through his hair. I sank onto the floor behind the couch, clutching my envelopes to my chest. My breath came in shallow gasps. What was he talking about? Lose everything? She needs it? I pressed my back against the couch, heart pounding in my ears. 1,000 possibilities flew through my mind, the worst of them all. Was he hiding something from me? Was he in trouble? Or worse? My mouth went dry. Carefully, so he wouldn't hear, I peered around the edge of the cushion. He stared at the table, where my envelopes lay forgotten. My fingers itched to pick them up, to grab the good news and throw away the bad. But I couldn't, because now I realized I didn't know what I was walking into. I rose silently and crept toward the coffee table. My pulse thundered as I snatched the ivory envelope first. The elegant script on the front read, "Promotion Acceptance," and it was thick with promise. I almost tore it open, but then I caught sight of his phone on the table. Last dialed. Harper Oncology Clinic. My blood ran cold. Harper. That was the clinic my best friend's mother had gone to for her last chemotherapy treatments. Panic twisted my stomach into knots. I pressed a hand to my mouth, fighting the urge to scream. I steadied myself and opened the second envelope. Mortgage Relief Program application. Relief? Relief sounded like charity. Why would we need mortgage relief? We had savings, investments, Until now, my mind had never stretched that far. I sank onto the sofa and let the envelopes fall to my lap. The jazz music seemed to slow, each note plucking at my nerves. James stood and moved to the window, his profile framed by the lavender sky. He gazed out at the city, hand pressed to the glass, as though searching for answers in the skyline. I couldn't stay hidden any longer. I rose and stepped into the open. "James?" My voice trembled. He turned, eyes haunted. For a moment he looked like a stranger, like the man I used to know had vanished. "Tiff," he said softly, using the nickname I hadn't heard in weeks. "I didn't hear you come in." I held up the mortgage envelope. "What's this?" My voice sounded flat, brittle. He swallowed and looked away. "It's paperwork for something. I thought maybe we could find some help." "Help?" My pulse pounded against my wrists. "You never mentioned this to me. You never said a word." He rubbed his jaw. "I didn't want to worry you until I knew for sure." He paused, gaze drifting to my desk where our wedding photo stood. "Tiffany, stop. Please." I shook my head, grief and anger twisting together. "Then why the phone call? Who was on the line? And why did you look so terrified?" His shoulders slumped. He closed his eyes and exhaled, as though he'd been holding his breath for days. "I'm sorry." His voice cracked. "I was talking to Dr. Perez at Harper Clinic. I didn't know how to tell you that Emily's MRI came back malignant. It's serious." My world tilted. Emily, my sweet daughter asleep at her grandmother's house tonight. The daughter who had been born less than a year after our wedding, the daughter whose first steps I'd captured on my phone. I sank to my knees, hands flying to my mouth. "Emily," I whispered. "What? How bad is it?" He knelt beside me, voice trembling. "They found a tumor. They're scheduling surgery next week. And the bills, they're already hundreds of thousands. I thought I could handle it. Until today." Tears blurred my vision. I closed the distance and threw my arms around him. He hugged me back, his own tears soaking my hair. My promotion envelope fluttered to the floor, forgotten, and suddenly trivial. But even through the shock, a question burned. Why did he hide this from me? Why did he treat it like a secret? I pulled back, searching his eyes. "James, we're a team. You should have told me." He pressed his forehead to mine. "I know. I was ashamed. I felt like I'd failed at being a father, the moment I couldn't save my own child." His voice broke. "I thought I could fix it alone. I was wrong." I closed my eyes and let his words sink in. The good news and the bad news blurred together. Promotion or tumor, this night had upended everything I believed about our life together. I took a shaky breath and wiped my tears. "We'll face it. Both of us. No more secrets." My voice grew firmer. "Tomorrow, I start my new role. And tomorrow, we meet with Dr. Perez together. We're in this marriage together. Do you understand?" He nodded, relief and shame mingling on his face. "Yes, I'm so sorry, Tiff." I rose and held out my hand. "Come on. Let's sit and plan. Because we have 2 fights now, one to celebrate, one to survive." As we sank onto the sofa, envelopes set aside, I felt the weight of uncertainty settle around us. But beneath it, a spark of hope glowed. We would face tomorrow as one. And if you think this chapter was intense, wait until you hear what happened 15 years ago. You won't believe it. I hardly slept that night. Even as exhaustion pulled at my limbs, my mind replayed every moment of the confrontation. James's tremulous voice on the phone, the way his shoulders slumped when he admitted he'd kept Emily's diagnosis a secret, and my own gasp that shattered the calm of our living room. By dawn, I was awake, too restless to rest, too haunted to find peace. I crept into the kitchen and made coffee, hands shaking so badly I nearly dropped the mug. The steam curled into the pale morning light, and for a moment I imagined it was the smoke of my anxiety rising from the cup. I sipped slowly, bracing for the day ahead. Tomorrow I would start my new role at the design firm, my promotion that I'd fought years to earn. And tomorrow we would walk into the clinic together, side by side. But today, I needed answers. I needed to understand why James had buried this truth so deeply. He emerged from our bedroom at 8, wearing a suit that looked crumpled around the collar. His eyes were puffy, shadowed by sleeplessness and remorse. I set my coffee on the counter without looking at him. "Morning," he said quietly. I turned, presenting him the second envelope, the mortgage relief one. "You signed these without telling me," I said. "Why hide it?" He swallowed. "I thought I could handle it. I thought if I shielded you, I could protect you from the panic." He ran a hand through his hair. "I was wrong." My chest tightened. "Protect me?" I echoed. "We're partners. I deserve to share your burden." My voice cracked despite my effort to stay calm. He nodded, guilt plain on his face. "I know. I'm sorry. I was ashamed. Ashamed that I couldn't save my own daughter. Ashamed that I couldn't protect my wife." I stared at him, breath shallow. His confession cut deeper than any argument. I wanted to be furious, to punish him for his secrecy, but I also saw the raw terror in his eyes, a father's terror when his child's life hangs in the balance. I crossed the kitchen and took his hand. "Tell me everything," I said. "No more omissions." He led me to the table, and over eggs and toast he explained each horrifying detail. Emily's tumour, the experimental treatment he'd scrambled to finance, the loans he'd taken out in his name alone. Every unpaid bill, every desperate call to the clinic, every solitary night spent researching new therapies. My heart ached for him, for her, for the helpless panic that had driven him into deception. By the time he finished, tears blurred my vision. I reached out and squeezed his hand, feeling the tremor of relief, or was it guilt, run through him. "We'll face it together," I said. "From now on." He exhaled, gratitude shining in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered. "I don't know what I'd do without you." I offered him a small, uncertain smile. "You'll never have to find out." Later that morning, I sat at my desk at the firm's headquarters, heart pounding as my new manager welcomed me to the team. I forced myself to focus on the presentation, on the fresh projects awaiting my creative touch. Yet even as applause filled the conference room, my mind drifted back to James's confession. Between slides, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Praying for Emily. Call me when you can." I stepped into the hallway and dialed. "Honey?" Her voice crackled with concern. "What's going on? Is Emily okay?" I swallowed. "She's stable," I lied, smoothing my voice. "They're scheduling surgery next week." "Oh, Tiffany," my mother's quiet sob made me choke up. "I'm here for you, for all of you." I thanked her and hung up, heart heavy. As I re-entered the boardroom, I realized this double life, wife, mother, executive, was fracturing me. I needed clarity. I needed to remember why I fell in love with James in the first place, to summon the strength we both needed now. During my lunch break, I walked through the nearby park, letting the breeze carry away my racing thoughts. Every joyful bark of a dog, every child's laughter felt both comforting and cruel. Comforting because life goes on, cruel because Emily's life was hanging by a thread. I paused by a bench where couples whispered and held hands. I closed my eyes and pictured our wedding day, the way James's eyes lit up when I walked down the aisle, how I'd believed we could conquer anything together. That memory glowed like a beacon in my chest. And then, a sudden chill. My fingers tightened around the strap of my purse as a single, sharp memory stabbed through the haze. A party 15 years ago, a door slammed in my face, a life turned upside down by betrayal. I gasped and clutched my heart. My pulse thundered. That night had shaped me, taught me to guard my heart with steel. But now, as the memory of my darkest humiliation washed over me, I understood why the past and present were colliding. The secret that had wounded me back then was about to meet the secret James had kept from me now. I pressed my palm to the bench, steadying myself. The world around me blurred. I knew, without question, that I had to confront my own history before I could fully embrace this new battle. My phone buzzed again. "Can you pick me up at the clinic?" James's message was simple, urgent. I stood, determination coiling in my chest. "On my way," I typed. As I hurried back toward the city streets, I realized the next step was clear. I had to face that old wound, that young Tiffany left on the curb, and finally understand why it still ached, and how it would guide me through the storm ahead. I ran the last few blocks toward the clinic, heart pounding like a drum in my ears. The city lights blurred as rain began to fall, soft at first, then in heavier drops that splashed against my coat. My mind raced. Emily, my little girl with the bright laugh. James, the man I vowed to face everything with. And then, that night from 15 years ago, when betrayal and shame had reshaped my life. I shook my head, trying to banish the memory, but it refused to go away. I was 13, fresh out of college, and head over heels for a guy named Alex. His apartment at the loft party had pulsed with music and laughter, until the laughter turned cruel. I'd caught him kissing another girl, and before I could even speak, he'd grabbed my arm and dragged me through the crowd to the fire escape, yanked me down the metal stairs, and thrown me onto the sidewalk below in front of everyone. I sat there, coat torn, heels lost, tears blurring the faces of people I thought were my friends. I'd felt my heart crack in 2 moments before crawling home, humiliated and small. I paused under a street lamp, rain plastering my hair to my forehead, and closed my eyes. That night had taught me to stand guard, to keep my guard razor sharp. It had made me strong, but it had also left me wary, building walls around my heart. Was I letting those old walls close in on me again now, keeping me from fully trusting James? I shook off the memory and sprinted the last block, turning the corner to the clinic's glass doors. James stood inside, umbrella forgotten, pacing under the harsh fluorescent lights of the lobby. When he saw me, relief and guilt warred in his eyes. "Thank God," he breathed, stepping forward. I held up a hand. "Don't apologize yet," I said. My voice felt steadier than I expected. "We need to talk. About this and about us." He nodded, his face pale. We stepped into a side room off the lobby, small, windowless, with plastic chairs and a bulletin board plastered with health pamphlets. I sank onto one of the chairs and watched him as he closed the door behind us. "First," I said, "I want to hear every detail of that phone call." I tapped my temple. "I want nothing left hidden." He swallowed. "They called to confirm payment for the surgery deposit," he began. "They need 300,000 by Monday, or they can't reserve the operating room." He rubbed his hands together, knuckles white. I thought I could juggle it, borrow from savings and sell some investments, but when I ran the numbers this morning, we'd still be short by 50,000. I panicked. His voice cracked. "So I called the mortgage relief program, hoping they'd offer me a bridge loan, but I couldn't promise the money in time." I exhaled slowly. "And you thought you could manage this entire crisis alone? You thought lying would protect me?" My tone was gentle but firm. "But secrets only build walls." He nodded miserably. "I know. I realize now it nearly broke us." I leaned forward. "Now that we're facing it together, what's our plan?" I forced myself to focus on solutions, not blame. He looked at me, eyes glimmering. "I've already reached out to the clinic's social worker. They might be able to extend the deposit deadline by 2 days if we start the payment plan now. And I've spoken to my broker about liquidating some stock, some of the small positions I've held since before we met. That could cover most of it." I sighed with relief. "Let's do it. And I'll help. Tonight I'll call my parents. They insisted on helping once they knew. We'll bring whatever resources we can." I reached for his hand. "We're doing this together." He squeezed it gratefully. "Thank you." We left the little room and walked hand in hand toward the nurse's station, my mind already shifting into problem-solving mode. But as we passed the glossy posters of smiling children in scrubs, another thought stabbed me. What about the girl I once was, thrown out into the night, unprotected? Could I now reach back and heal both that wound and this one? Later, after making arrangements with the social worker and locking down our payment strategy, James and I sat in the quiet family lounge. Emily slept in his arms, undisturbed by the late-hour hustle outside. I brewed tea at the small kitchenette, hands steady, and carried 2 steaming cups back to the couch. I sat beside him. "Can I tell you something?" I asked softly. He looked up, concern etched on his face. "Anything." I took a deep breath. I was remembering a night from my own past, my first real heartbreak. I watched his expression soften. A guy I loved threw me out of his apartment in front of everyone, left me bleeding and humiliated on the sidewalk. That betrayal shaped me, for better and worse. It taught me to be strong, but it also made me terrified that love always turns to cruelty. His fingers brushed mine. "I'm so sorry, Tiff. I didn't know." I smiled faintly. "I never told you. I thought it was my burden to carry alone, just like you tried to carry yours." I paused, eyes brimming. "But now I see that burdens become lighter when shared." He moved to hug me, Emma still cradled in his other arm. "I promise no more lies, no more pushing you away." I touched his cheek. "We'll face our fears together, from that girl on the sidewalk to our own daughter here." I looked down at Emily's peaceful face. "We'll be the family that fights for each other, always." He nodded, tears shining. "Always." As I leaned back, the faint hum of the fluorescent lights overhead felt less harsh, more like a spotlight on our new beginning. Outside, the rain had stopped, and the city's neon glow filtered through the blinds. I sipped my tea and whispered to myself, This is where yesterday and today meet, and we decide what tomorrow will be. I woke before dawn, my mind still humming with the memory of that rain-drenched night at the clinic. The weight of our plan settled in my chest like an anchor. Liquidate stocks, lean on family, stretch every dollar, anything to save Emily. But beneath the strategy stirred something darker. The echo of my own betrayal, the night I'd been thrown out on the sidewalk, utterly alone. I wondered if facing this crisis would finally heal that wound, or reopen it entirely. I dressed quietly, slipping into the tailored suit I'd bought for my first day in the new role. The fabric felt stiff, a reminder that I no longer fit the person I once was. In the bathroom mirror, I touched the scar above my eyebrow, faint now, but still there. Alex's careless shove had left more than a bruise that night. It had taught me never to rely on anyone but myself. And yet today I was choosing trust over self-reliance. I drew a deep breath and let it out in a steady sigh. In the kitchen, James poured coffee and met my gaze. Despite the dark circles under his eyes, there was a spark of determination I hadn't seen in years. "Ready?" he asked softly. I nodded. "Ready?" We clasped hands across the counter, two wounded fighters drawing strength from each other. By 7:30 a.m., I was at the bank, sitting across from the loan officer who'd looked so familiar when I'd processed William's request in that other story. The polished mahogany desk, the green banker's lamp, even the swirl of mint in my tea, all felt tinged with irony. Today, I was the one asking for help. I laid out the plan: sell $80,000 in stock, apply for a 2-day extension on the hospital deposit, leverage my promotion bonus for the remainder. The officer tapped her pen, brows furrowed. "You've thought this through," she said finally. "I'll submit the extension request today, but I can't guarantee approval, and the stock sale will take 3 business days to settle." 3 days? My heart tightened. Emily's surgery was scheduled in 4, 1 day of margin, and the nightmare of watching her slip from our grasp. I forced myself to stay calm. "Thank you," I said. "Please proceed." We shook hands, and I left with a folder of conditional approvals and looming deadlines. Outside, the city felt too bright. I pressed my palm against the brick wall of the bank and closed my eyes. I could almost hear the laughter of that long-ago party crowd, see Alex's smug face as he'd thrown me out. Back then, my only option had been to pick up the pieces alone. And I had. Today, I refused to go through this alone. I opened my eyes, squared my shoulders, and walked toward the subway. At the firm, my first morning in the promotion was a whirlwind: strategy meetings, design reviews, onboarding calls. My team welcomed me with genuine excitement, too genuine, I realized, as their congratulations felt tinged with pity once they saw the shadow under my eyes. I plastered on a smile and dove into work, burying my panic in color swatches and wireframes. But as noon approached, my phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Perez's office. "Deposit extension approved until Thursday noon. Good luck." I exhaled so hard, I startled my assistant. "Family emergency," I lied, snagged my bag, and rushed out. No time for awkward explanations. Back on the street, the city felt smaller, the sky lower. Rain threatened again. I hailed a cab and headed to my parents' house. They lived in a quieter borough, where magnolia trees lined the sidewalks and the air smelled like honeysuckle. I needed their support and felt guilty asking for it. Mum answered before I knocked, arms open. I stumbled inside and she pulled me into a hug so fierce I thought she'd squeeze the breath from me. Oh, baby, what's wrong? I wiped my tears and told them everything. Emily's diagnosis, the financial cliff we were teetering on, James's secrecy, my own childhood betrayal. My father's broad hand on my shoulder steadied me, and Mum's motherly tears anchored my resolve. "We'll help," Dad said, voice soft but unwavering. "Whatever you need." I forced a smile. "Thank you," I whispered. The guilt melted into gratitude, and I realized this was what I'd been missing, the safety of leaning on people who loved me. Late that afternoon, I returned home to find James waiting on the stoop, damp hair plastered to his forehead. He stood as I approached, eyes haunted. "How's it going?" he asked. "Extension granted," I said. "Stock sale in process, and my parents will cover the gap if needed." Relief and exhaustion warred in his face. He opened his mouth, but I held up a finger. "Listen," I said, voice firm. "No more secrets. We face this together. Every call, every decision. And after this, we go to marriage counseling." I took his hand. "We can't let silence tear us apart again." He nodded, tears brimming. "Agreed. I'm sorry for lying to you." I pulled him into a hug, pressing my cheek against his chest. His heartbeat thrummed beneath my ear, steady, alive. "I forgive you," I whispered, "but we have work to do." As dusk settled, we sat on the front steps, planning the next moves, finalize the stock sale, pack hospital bags, update wills, call the hospital social worker again. The air was cool, the street lamps' glow soft. I rested my head on James's shoulder and let the moment wash over me. In that quiet companionship, two survivors who'd once sworn never to trust again, I felt something new, the fragile bloom of hope. The past had marked us both, but it no longer defined us. Together we would write a different story for Emily, for ourselves, and if we were brave enough, maybe even for the ghosts we'd carried for so long. I woke before dawn again, heart fluttering like a hummingbird's wings. Today was Emily's surgery day. My mind raced through every detail. The deposit extension granted by a hair, the stock sale settling just in time, my parents' unwavering support, and, most of all, James's quiet courage as he faced our daughter's fight. But beneath the hope trembled a familiar fear. Would mercy be enough to save her? And could I let myself forgive the man who'd once shattered my trust? I slipped into the hospital gown James had left by my bedside the night before, then scribbled a note to the nurses. "Please update me first." I hugged Emily's tiny handprint card beside my bed, her last art project at preschool, and whispered, "You've got this, sweetheart." Then I found James in the hallway, pacing by the registry desk. He looked up, eyes dark with worry. "How are you holding up?" he asked Itzod, voice soft. I forced a smile. "Ready?" I said, even though my throat felt like sandpaper. We shared a steadying glance, two partners in the scariest moment yet. The OR doors slid open at 8:30. Dr. Perez gave us a reassuring nod as he wheeled Emily's bed past us, her bright blanket tucked up to her chin. "We'll update you within the hour," he said. His confidence gave me a sliver of calm, but I still clung to James's hand as they disappeared around the corner. We followed the clock's slow tick in the waiting room. Every minute stretched into an hour. I tried to read, to scroll news, not the kind I wanted, anything to distract me. James stood and walked the floor, murmuring to our phones. The walls felt too white, too clean, too devoid of warmth. Then, halfway through the 4-hour wait, My phone buzzed. Emily is out. Send her to ICU in 15 minutes. She's stable. My breath caught. She's stable, I mouthed to James, who sank into the chair beside me. Relief and exhaustion pooled in his eyes. Moments later, Dr. Perez appeared at the door. The surgery went perfectly. We removed the entire tumor and margins are clear. She answered all the post-op checks beautifully. He smiled, tired but genuine. It's a miracle response. We'll transfer her to ICU for monitoring, but I expect a full recovery. Tears pooled behind my eyes. I clutched James's hand so tightly my knuckles turned white. Thank you, I whispered, voice trembling. Dr. Perez nodded. You've done everything right. She's in the best hands. Then he was gone, and suddenly the beeping monitors and hushed voices of the ICU lobby felt like the promise of tomorrow. In the ICU, Emily lay under a soft pink blanket, tiny tubes taped to her arm. When we crept in, she opened one sleepy eye and gave us a half smile. I brushed a strand of hair from her forehead. You're amazing, Pumpkin. Her little fingers curled around mine. James leaned close. I love you, he whispered to me, tears sliding down his cheeks. Thank you for standing by me. I swallowed hard, remembering the way his eyes had darted away when I first confronted him, the shame of his secret weighing him down. Now he was here, vulnerable and devoted, and I knew forgiveness wasn't forgetting. It was choosing to trust again. I took a steady breath. I forgive you, I said, voice firm, because I know you'd move mountains for her. He closed his eyes, relief washing over him like summer rain. I will for the rest of my life. That afternoon, when Emily was stronger and the nurse allowed us to hold her, we sat as a family on the little recliner chair. I held my daughter's tiny hand, and James rested his head on my shoulder, his other arm wrapped around both of us. The hum of hospital equipment faded into the background, replaced by the soft rhythm of Emily's breathing. I thought of the girl I'd once been, thrown out into the rain and left alone under neon lights, taught that love can hurt. And I marveled at how that brokenness had shaped the woman I'd become, fiercely protective, unyieldingly hopeful, and brave enough to love again. Because sometimes the greatest power we have is our capacity to heal and to grant mercy. I leaned forward and kissed Emily's cheek. She stirred and murmured, "Mama?" Her voice was sleepy but clear. I whispered back, "I'm here, baby. We're okay." James watched us, eyes soft. "I promise to never keep anything from you again," he said. I nodded, tears shining. Never. Later that evening, after Emily was moved to a regular room and the doctors gave us the all-clear to go home soon, I sat by the window of her room. James brought coffee, and we clinked our cups quietly. "To family, Fikits," he said. "To mercy," I replied, and took a sip. Outside, the sun dipped low, painting the sky in lavender and gold. I closed my eyes and breathed in the warm air, feeling a final knot of fear untangle in my chest. The past hadn't vanished. It was woven into every scar and every triumph, but it no longer ruled me. I leaned into James, our hands entwined around the coffee mugs, and let the day's triumph sink in. Emily's recovery was just beginning, but we had already won the war against despair, secrecy, and shame. Thank you for following this journey. If you believed in the power of forgiveness and love, give this video a thumbs up, leave your thoughts below, and share it with someone who needs hope. Remember, sometimes the hardest battles lead to the most beautiful victories.